The King of Israel to his followers, the bulldozer to admirers and detractors alike, Ariel Sharon's turbulent story and contradictions spanned more than 60 years of Israeli history. In and out of uniform, he was always a warrior. But what did he achieve, and had he lived, what more did he have in mind for Israel and the Palestinians? He was certainly decisive, provided the decisions were his. In 1973, he crossed the Suez Canal and helped to defeat the Egyptian army. It was risky, unorthodox, perhaps even crazy.
Without madness, I don't believe that anybody would have done it. To believe that you can do it during one night, a certain element of madness should be there.
His maverick style infuriated his superiors, but his men loved it and him.
Yeah, very popular. I remember as a combatant, 21 years old during the Yom Kippur War in '73, we were very motivated to go to follow the leader, to follow the commander, and we knew that if you follow Ariel Sharon, at the end you'll find your destination. You're not going to get lost.
The tiny village of Kibbutz on the Israel-Jordan border is in ruins.
But there was a dark, brutal side too, from retaliatory raids on Palestinian villages in the 1950s to the devastating assault on Beirut 30 years later, culminating in the massacre of Palestinian refugees at the hands of Israel's Lebanese allies.
We had a problem here, how to keep in our hands.
Throughout it all, Ariel Sharon was passionate about the land, often to be found like this, map in hand, explaining the significance of holding on to territory captured in 1967. To Jewish settlers, he was a hero, telling them to grab every hilltop while they could.
He pushed, he manipulated, he exploited every opportunity to make sure that as many Jews were living in as many locations throughout the territories that we now administer after the '67 war.
But Sharon's attachment to the land was less spiritual, more strategic. Giving this up was simply too risky.
Israel is against having a Palestinian state. And the government, as a matter of all the government, were against having a Palestinian state here because of the dangers.
The evil done by the settlement process from the very beginning of the occupation in '67, but put on steroids by Sharon from when he was Minister of Agriculture in 1977, I think will be with us for a very, very long time, if not permanently. It has changed the face of Palestine.
For years, this colonization of occupied territory set Israel at odds with its closest ally, the United States. It saw settlements as an obstacle to peace. But violence, Sharon countered, was a much greater obstacle. With suicide bombs claiming dozens of lives and America pursuing its war on terror after 9/11, Sharon's argument was simple: we're all in this together. But he did something more. He got George Bush to agree, in writing, that some settlements would never be removed.
The letter that George Bush wrote to him is his greatest achievement, because he asked for an American commitment to support Israel's negotiating position in writing, and he got it in writing. And he was very proud of that letter from Bush. He called it a second Balfour Declaration. So under the influence of Ariel Sharon, George Bush reversed American foreign policy.
But Sharon was pragmatic too. If giving up land was risky, he saw that sometimes holding on was worse. The forcible removal of 9,000 Jewish settlers from the Gaza Strip was, for him, a small price to pay for no longer having to take account of Gaza's 1.5 million Palestinians.
Too many of us today will not remember the good days, but only remember the bitterness of the fact that he failed us at a moment that we thought we had someone in a position of power to assure our future forever.
But Ariel Sharon didn't consult the Palestinians either. He was too busy fighting them. Yasser Arafat was an enemy to be surrounded and humiliated in his headquarters. With no peace partner, he said, we have to take decisions ourselves. The wall, or separation barrier, was one of them. Initially for security, but a clear statement too of where a future border might be drawn, cutting off even more Palestinian territory, part of Sharon's enduring legacy.
Despite Sharon's disappearance from the political scene, his legacy looms very large in Israeli politics because he was the architect of a new national consensus which was based on unilateralism.
8 years on, an energetic American Secretary of State shuttles this way and that, trying to breathe some kind of life into the peace process. Israel's current Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, is, if anything, more hawkish. But should he be grateful to his old rival?
One now sees Secretary Kerry trying to impose on the Palestinians things that are part of the Israeli position, things like acceptance of Israel as a Jewish state. In fact, there are some reports that Kerry's trying to impose this on all the Arab states. So I think that Sharon began a process back in the early 2000s of pulling the United States away from a nominal position as an honest broker. You could argue that this has been done before, but certainly since Sharon and since that 2004 letter, it's become much more noticeable. And unfortunately, I think it may become a permanent part of the landscape of negotiations.
2 strokes a month apart brought an abrupt end to Ariel Sharon's long, eventful career. We simply don't know what his next move would have been. His first term in office was characteristically decisive. Israelis from the right and the left seemed willing to follow his lead. But the West Bank was always going to be infinitely more complicated than Gaza, far more settlers on much more strategic land. His plans would almost certainly have been too much for them, too little for the Palestinians. And in the years since, it's only got harder.